The unexamined life is not worth living. Socrates spoke those words with the calm of someone who had walked too close to the edge of certainty and seen the ground shift beneath it. He wasn't bragging about his doubt. He was handing us a compass. If you don't know why you believe what you believe, you're steering with your eyes closed. Even when the road looks familiar, consider the ordinary mornings you've lived through 1,000 times. A coffee cup, a commute, a checklist of to-dos that promise meaning if you finish them. But meaning isn't a prize given for completing tasks. It's a posture you take toward your own thoughts. The Socratic invitation is simple and stubborn. Pause, ask, listen, revise. It's not about cynicism toward life. It's about honesty toward life. When you start examining, you encounter a paradox. You discover that the mind loves certainty as a shelter, yet certainty is a barrier to growth. You feel a pull toward the familiar, even when the familiar leads you in circles. The quote becomes a metronome, in a way, counting off the moments when you drift back to autopilot. The real work isn't dissecting other people's beliefs. It's interrogating your own assumptions about time, success, and happiness. Socrates didn't write a manifesto. He walked into the marketplace and asked questions that unsettled people more than any sermon could. He asked what they meant by justice, what they meant by good, and whether their daily choices actually served those meanings. The method was not polemics, but a willingness to be wrong in public, to be corrected by the world, to be corrected by the self you think you know. The first twist is that examination costs you something: certainty, reputation, the safety of predictable answers. The second twist is that examination also gives you something priceless: a possibility. When you test your beliefs, you're not shredding your identity, you're refining it. You're not surrendering a sense of self. You're clarifying what you actually stand for when the room grows quiet and the noise of the day fades away. There's a practical path here. Start with a single belief that shapes a decision you've made recently. It might be about work, about a relationship, about your health, about how you spend your time. Write down the exact assumption behind that belief. Then ask, what would have to be true for this belief to be false? What would I need to observe in the world or in my own life to change my mind? The act of articulating the assumption and testing it with a counterexample is an apprenticeship in humility. It's a daily practice, not a one-off trial. The quote also reshapes our relationship with fear. Fear loves certainty because certainty feels like armor against the unknown. But when you examine fear, you learn a strange truth. Fear isn't a sign that you should retreat. It's a signal that something matters. The unease is not the enemy. It's a map pointing toward values you're pretending to outgrow. Socrates would say the fear is the first clue that your soul wants to grow beyond its current settings. Let me give you a modern lens. In a world of instant feedback loops, where your feed reinforces your beliefs with micro-affirmations, examination is a form of rebellion. It's not rebellion against truth. It's rebellion against the illusion that truth is a fixed banner you raise and march behind. Truth is a process, not a possession. The unexamined life clings to what it believes it already knows. The examined life embraces the texture of uncertainty and uses it to craft stronger beliefs, not brittle certainties. The turning point often arrives as a quiet contradiction. You realize that you can love your life and still wish to change it. You can respect your past decisions and still admit you would choose differently if you could start again with what you know now. The examined life doesn't erase your story, it edits it, sharpening the edges where you used to blur. This is where perspective shifts happen, not a dramatic revelation, but a subtle realignment of what you most want to protect. There's also a social dimension. Examining your life invites others into the conversation. It invites honest dialogue rather than polite consensus. It invites watchdogs and mentors, and even critics who push you beyond your comfort zone. The goal isn't to win an argument. It's to test the ground on which you stand so you don't collapse when weather changes. When you share your questions with someone else, You learn that you're not alone in wrestling with them. Other minds can illuminate your blind spots and remind you that good thinking is a communal craft, as much as an individual discipline. And yet, the most radical element of Socrates' invitation may be its generosity. If the unexamined life is not worth living, then the examined life must be a life worth gifting to others. Your curiosity becomes a gift you give to your future self and to the people around you. When you model for others the habit of questioning with kindness, you invite a culture of growth rather than a culture of certainty. You don't pretend to have all the answers. You show others how to ask better questions. Here is a simple, concrete practice you can carry forward tonight. Pick one ordinary moment tomorrow and treat it as a case study in your own thinking. Before you act, pause for one breath, then articulate the belief behind your next choice. Then ask a single, honest question. If you can phrase that question and listen for the answer, you've already begun to live the examined life, even in a hectic day. The power of this approach doesn't depend on becoming a philosopher. It depends on choosing courage over comfort, curiosity over closing ranks, and presence over autopilot. Socrates didn't demand perfection. He demanded willingness to be changed by reality. And in a culture that confuses speed with success, that willingness is a radical act. In the end, the unexamined life may be not a verdict on who you are, but a warning about who you could become if you stopped asking questions. So the question isn't whether you can tolerate doubt, or whether you already possess the right answers. It's whether you're willing to let your own questions outgrow the labels you've placed on yourself. The quote is not a cage, it's a doorway. A doorway to a life where meaning isn't inherited, but forged through deliberate attention. If you're listening with a quiet heart, you might notice that this is less about philosophy and more about freedom. Freedom from the illusion that life's texture is a fixed map and not a living experiment. Freedom to revise directions, to reframe goals, to align daily actions with deeper purposes. The path is small, visible in ordinary choices, and the effect compounds across years. The unexamined life is not worth living, not because thinking is hard, but because living without clear intent is a poorer kind of life. A life that could be better if you choose to look closer. You don't need a council of academics to begin. You need a moment of honesty, a pencil, and a willingness to see yourself clearly for once. The quote becomes your anchor and your invitation to question, to listen, to revise, and not to erase your past, but to understand it more honestly. Not to abandon yourself, but to reintroduce yourself to the parts you've left in the shadows. So ask again, not as a trap, but as a doorway. What beliefs am I treating as unchallengeable today? What would it take for me to change my mind? Not because I am weak, but because I am awake. The answer won't be dramatic every time. Sometimes it will arrive as a quiet shift, a subtle preference for nuance over absolutes, a choice to listen longer before replying. And in that quiet, you'll discover what Socrates believed more than 2 millennia ago, that the bravest act is to seek truth with humility, to live a life that makes room for being wrong, and to walk forward anyway, with more awareness than you had yesterday. Open your notebook. Write one question you're afraid to ask yourself. Sit with it for a night. In the morning, answer it as if you're advising a younger version of you. And when you do, you'll realize the value of the quote, isn't in its verdict, but in its invitation. To live as if your thinking matters, because it does. More than you can ever measure. The world doesn't change all at once, but small. Deliberate questions accumulate like seeds. Each one grows a branch of insight you can lean on in uncertainty. The unexamined life remains a warning. The examined life becomes a practice you can trust. In that trust, perspective widens. Problems don't shrink, you do. And with that widening comes a lightness you didn't expect. A sense that life can be both fragile and radiant. That you can hold doubt without being consumed by it. That you can decide with intention even when outcomes are uncertain. So let this be your ongoing motion. Question, reflect, adjust, repeat. The craft of living well, isnt, about achieving perfect clarity. It's about sustaining thoughtful momentum through the fog. Socrates gave us a tool, not a final answer. Use it. Let your daily choices be experiments in clarity. Let your conversations be tests of your best values. Let your curiosity be a quiet rebellion against the complacency that pretends to be comfort. The price of the examined life is paid one moment at a time. But its dividends are paid forever in more honest mornings, more meaningful work, and a clarity that isnt blunts certainty, but a lucid courage. The unexamined life is not worth living, not because doubt is noble, but because clarity is humane. And clarity, once learned, reshapes not only your choices, but your entire ecosystem of relationships, work, and time. So, will you begin again today? With a small act of curiosity, a real question, and a quiet willingness to be surprised by your own mind? If you do, you'll find that Socrates wasn't scolding you from a distant pedestal. He was offering a companion, a method to live more fully, with eyes open and open to the possibility that your perspective can expand without breaking. The door is labeled with a simple word: listen.